Document. Part 1. The sun was setting over the dense forest in northern Montana, casting long shadows across the ground. Emily Dawson tightened her grip on her camera bag as she trudged through the thick underbrush. Her boots sank slightly into the soft soil, and the air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. She had always loved hiking alone. It gave her time to think, to breathe, and most importantly, to take pictures. Wildlife photography was more than just a hobby for Emily. It was her passion. Every trip into the woods felt like an adventure waiting to unfold. Today, however, something felt different. The usual sounds of birds chirping and squirrels scurrying seemed muted, almost absent. The silence was eerie, pressing down on her like a weight. Still, she pressed forward, determined not to let unease get the better of her. After all, this part of the forest was known for its untouched beauty and rare sightings of animals that avoided human contact. Maybe today would be the day she captured that perfect shot, the one that would make her Instagram followers go wild. As she climbed over a fallen log, her foot caught on a root, and she stumbled forward. Cursing softly, she steadied herself against a tree trunk. That's when she noticed a strange glint among the leaves ahead. Frowning, Emily adjusted her backpack and stepped closer. At first glance, it looked like sunlight reflecting off metal or glass, but as she moved closer, the source of the shimmer became clearer. It wasn't man-made at all. Trapped beneath a tangle of broken branches was a creature unlike anything Emily had ever seen. Its body was sleek and feline-like, covered in fur that shimmered faintly with an iridescent glow. The colors shifted subtly as the light hit its silver, blending into gold, then hints of green and blue. But what struck her most were its eyes. Even though they were half-closed in pain, they gleamed with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't the eyes of a wild animal. They were, too knowing, too aware. Emily hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. The creature didn't look dangerous, not in its current state. One of its legs was pinned under a heavy branch, and blood stained the fur around its side. Despite its injuries, it watched her intently, its chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Slowly, cautiously, Emily knelt beside it. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Hey there," she said softly, keeping her voice low and steady. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature made no sound, but its gaze never wavered. Emily reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching it, and it didn't flinch or try to bite. She took it as a good sign. Carefully, she began pulling away the smaller branches that trapped it. Each movement sent a jolt of adrenaline through her veins, but she refused to back down. This thing, whatever it was hurt, and if she left it here, it might not survive the night. After several minutes of effort, she managed to free its leg. The creature let out a soft, almost musical purr-like noise, and Emily couldn't help but smile. "You're welcome," she murmured, sitting back on her heels. Close, she could see how truly alien it was. Its ears were longer and more pointed than any cat's. Its tail, what little she could see of it, was prehensile, curling slightly around a nearby twig. Yet despite its otherworldly appearance, there was something undeniably endearing about it. "Guess I can't just leave you here, huh?" Emily said, tilting her head. She glanced around, considering her options. Carrying it back to her cabin would be risky not only because of its size, but also because she had no idea what it really was. For all she knew, it could turn on her. The moment it regained its strength, still leaving it behind felt wrong. Taking a deep breath, she slipped her arms underneath its surprisingly light body and lifted it gently. It tensed for a moment, but didn't struggle, seemingly content to rest against her. The hike back was harder than she'd anticipated. The creature's weight, combined with the uneven terrain, left her muscles burning by the time she reached the edge of the forest. By then, twilight had settled over the landscape, painting everything in shades of gray and shadow. Emily paused for a moment, catching her breath while cradling the injured being in her arms. Its glowing fur provided just enough light to guide her steps, and she found herself marveling at how strangely beautiful it was. When she finally arrived at her cabin, she kicked open the door and stepped inside, flicking on the lights. The cozy interior, filled with mismatched furniture and stacks of books, seemed even homier now that she wasn't alone. Gently, she placed the creature on a pile of blankets near the fireplace. It blinked slowly, watching her every move with those piercing eyes. Emily grabbed a first aid kit from the bathroom and returned to tend to its wounds. "You're lucky I'm such a sucker for strays," she joked, dabbing at the cuts on its side with a damp cloth. The creature flinched slightly, but otherwise remained still, allowing her to clean and bandage its injuries while she worked. She couldn't shake the feeling that it understood her, that it was studying her just as much as she was studying it. When she finished, she sat back on her heels and sighed. "Well, buddy, looks like you're stuck with me for a while." The nickname came naturally, rolling off her tongue without much thought. Buddy, it fit somehow, even though she doubted it was actually male or even mammalian. Still, it was easier than calling it the creature or it. Besides, it already seemed to respond to her voice. Whether that was coincidence or something more, she wasn't sure. Over the next hour, Emily busied herself making dinner, occasionally glancing over at Buddy to check on him. She decided to stick with the pronouns, to be resting comfortably. His breathing slow and steady. She snapped a few photos of him with her phone, unable to resist documenting the bizarre encounter. Before bed, she uploaded one of the pictures to her social media account, captioning it simply, "Found this little guy in the woods today? Anyone know what he is?" Within minutes, comments started pouring in. Some people guessed it was a rare breed of cat, while others suggested it might be some kind of exotic escapee from a zoo. A few joked that it looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Emily chuckled as she scrolled through the responses, feeling a sense of satisfaction. For once, her followers were as intrigued by her discovery as she was. But as she turned off her phone and climbed into bed, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. What exactly had she brought home? Was Buddy really harmless? Or was she playing with fire? Shaking off the doubt, she reminded herself that he was injured and vulnerable. Whatever secrets he held, they could wait until morning. For now, she drifted off to sleep, lulled by the soft crackling of the fire and the quiet hum of Buddy's rhythmic breathing. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of a sound that wasn't quite a growl, nor a hiss, but something far older and darker. Somewhere deep in the forest, unseen eyes glimmered in the darkness, watching and waiting. Document Part 3. Over the next few days, Emily found herself growing closer to Buddy than she ever thought possible. The bond between them felt almost magnetic, as if they were meant to meet in the forest that fateful afternoon. Buddy seemed to sense her emotions, responding to her moods with uncanny accuracy. When she was happy, it would curl up near her feet and let out soft, purring sounds. When she was upset or stressed, it would nuzzle against her hand, its glowing eyes filled with what could only be described as concern. Emily began documenting their interactions more frequently, snapping photos and recording short videos of Buddy's behavior. She uploaded these clips to her social media account, where her followers eagerly devoured every update. Comments poured in from people all over the world, many of them expressing awe at Buddy's otherworldly appearance. Some speculated about its origins, suggesting theories ranging from genetic mutations to alien life forms. Others simply marveled at how gentle and intelligent it seemed. One video in particular went viral. In it, Emily captured Buddy mimicking the sound of a bird chirping outside the window. At first, she hadn't believed what she was hearing, surely. No animal could replicate such a precise noise, but when she played the clip back, there was no denying it. Buddy had listened to the bird, processed the sound, and reproduced it flawlessly. The video racked up thousands of likes and shares within hours, sparking debates among scientists, conspiracy theorists, and casual viewers alike. Despite the attention, Emily tried to keep things normal at the cabin. She continued caring for Buddy, feeding it small portions of cooked chicken and vegetables, which it devoured eagerly. It never touched raw meat, a detail that reassured her whenever Jake brought up concerns about its predatory nature. Buddy also showed an impressive level of intelligence, solving simple puzzles Emily set up to test its abilities. Once she hid a treat under one of 3 cups and shuffled them around. Without hesitation, Buddy tapped the correct cup with its paw, retrieving the snack inside. Jake, however, remained skeptical. He avoided Buddy as much as possible, spending most of his time either working at the hardware store or tinkering on his truck in the driveway. Whenever he did come inside, he kept his distance, his eyes darting nervously toward the creature lounging by the fireplace. Emily noticed the tension building between them, but she didn't know how to bridge the gap. Every time she tried to reassure Jake that Buddy was harmless, he brushed her off with a scoff or a muttered comment about waiting for the other shoe to drop. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, Jake stormed out of the cabin, slamming the door behind him. Emily sighed, sinking onto the couch with a heavy heart. Buddy padded over to her, resting its head on her knee, absent-mindedly, stroked its fur, staring into the fire as tears welled up in her eyes. Why couldn't Jake see Buddy the way she did? Why was he so determined to view it as a threat? The silence was broken by the sound of footsteps approaching the cabin. Emily glanced toward the window, expecting to see Jake returning. Instead, she saw 2 men standing outside, their faces partially obscured by the fading light. One of them knocked on the door, startling her. Buddy's ears perked up, and it moved closer to Emily, its body tense and alert. "Who is it?" Emily called out, rising cautiously from the couch. "It's Dr. Alan Hughes," came the reply. "I'm here." "About your posts online? May we come in?" Emily hesitated, unsure whether to trust them. She peeked through the peephole and recognized Dr. Hughes from his profile picture. He was a local scientist who specialized in biology and ecology. The man beside him looked younger, possibly a research assistant. Taking a deep breath, she unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough to speak, without letting them inside. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Dr. Hughes smiled warmly, holding up a notebook. "We're intrigued by your discovery. Based on your descriptions and videos, this creature doesn't match any known species. We'd like to learn more." Emily glanced back at Buddy, who was watching the strangers intently. Its glowing fur cast faint shadows on the walls, making it look even more otherworldly. She shook her head. "I'm sorry, but I don't think that's a good idea. Buddy isn't ready for visitors." "Doctor," Hughes nodded understandingly. "Of course, we respect your decision, but if you change your mind, please let us know. This could be a groundbreaking opportunity for science and for humanity." After they left, Emily locked the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She turned to find Buddy sitting nearby, its head tilted curiously. For a moment, she wondered if inviting the scientists in would have been the right choice. Could they help her understand Buddy better, or would it put both of them in danger? Later that night, as she lay in bed, Emily replayed the day's events in her mind. The visit from Dr. Hughes had unsettled her, reminding her of how little she truly knew about Buddy. Was it really safe to keep it here? What if it belonged to some larger group, or worse, some advanced civilization that might come looking for it? These questions swirled in her thoughts, keeping her awake long after Jake returned and fell asleep beside her. The next morning, Emily woke up early, unable to shake the feeling of unease. She decided to take Buddy outside for some fresh air, hoping it might lift her spirits. The forest was quiet, bathed in the golden light of dawn. Birds chirped softly overhead, and the air smelled crisp and clean. Buddy trotted happily beside her, exploring the underbrush with obvious curiosity as they wandered deeper into the woods. Emily stumbled upon something strange, a metallic object half buried in the dirt. Kneeling down, she brushed away the leaves and soil, revealing a shard of silvery material that gleamed faintly in the sunlight. It was unlike anything she'd ever seen, smooth and cool to the touch. Intrigued, she slipped it into her pocket, deciding to show it to Dr. Hughes later. When they returned to the cabin, Jake was already awake, drinking coffee at the kitchen table. He barely acknowledged her presence, his focus fixed on the newspaper, spread out before him. Emily ignored his sullen demeanor and placed the metallic shard on the counter, examining it closely. Buddy sniffed at it briefly before losing interest. Curling up by the fireplace once again, that afternoon, Emily paid another visit to Dr. Hughes, bringing the shard with her. He examined it carefully, his expression growing increasingly serious. "This alloy. It's not terrestrial," he said finally, setting the shard down. "It's composed of elements we've never encountered before." "Where did you find it?" "Near where I discovered Buddy," Emily admitted. "Do you think it's connected to him somehow?" Dr. Hughes hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It's possible. If this creature is extraterrestrial, then this fragment could be part of its spacecraft, perhaps a tracking device. Either way, it suggests Buddy isn't alone. There may be others like it." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "Others, you mean? More creatures?" He nodded grimly. "If Buddy is indeed alien, then its presence here raises a lot of questions. Is it a scout, a refugee, or something else entirely? And what happens if its kind comes looking for it?" Emily left Dr. Hughes's office feeling overwhelmed. The idea of Buddy being part of a larger group was both thrilling and terrifying. She wanted to believe it was here by chance, lost and in need of help. But what if it wasn't? What if it had a purpose, one that didn't align with human interests? Back at the cabin, she found Jake waiting for her, his arms crossed over his chest. "You went to see that scientist, didn't you?" he accused, his tone sharp. "Yes," Emily admitted, refusing to back down. "I needed answers." "Don't you care about figuring out what Buddy really is?" "I care about staying alive," Jake shot back. "Every day you keep that thing here, we're putting ourselves at risk. What if it's dangerous? What if it brings trouble to our doorstep?" Emily clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Buddy hasn't hurt anyone. Stop acting like it's some kind of monster." Jake threw up his hands in frustration. "Fine. Keep pretending everything's fine. But when something bad happens, don't say I didn't warn you." Their argument ended in silence, each retreating to opposite ends of the cabin. Buddy watched them from the corner, its glowing eyes unreadable. For the first time since finding it, Emily felt truly torn. On one hand, she loved Buddy and trusted it implicitly. On the other hand, she couldn't ignore the growing uncertainty surrounding its origins and the potential consequences of harboring it. That night, she stared out the window at the darkened forest. Emily realized she was standing at a crossroads. Buddy had become a part of her life. But the choices she made now would determine not only its fate, but hers as well. Document Part 4. The days that followed were tense and uneasy. Emily tried to carry on as if everything was normal, but the weight of unanswered questions pressed down on her like a storm cloud. Buddy continued to recover, growing stronger. With each passing day, its movements became more fluid, its glowing fur brighter, and its eyes sharper. Yet, the sense of calm it once brought her began to fade, placed by a gnawing unease she couldn't shake. Jake's warnings echoed in her mind constantly. At first, she had dismissed them as paranoia, but now she found herself questioning every little thing. The noises outside at night grew louder screeches and growls that sent shivers down her spine. Livestock from nearby farms kept disappearing, leaving behind only scraps of fur or feathers. Farmers talked nervously about predators in the area. Though no one could agree on what kind of animal was responsible, deep down, Emily wondered if Buddy might somehow be connected to these events. Even though it never left the cabin, one evening. After another long day of avoiding Jake's pointed glares, Emily decided to take Buddy for a walk. She needed fresh air, and she thought maybe some time outdoors would help clear her head. Buddy trotted happily beside her, its tail swaying gently. As it explored the familiar forest trails, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. And the air smelled crisp and cool as they wandered deeper into the woods. Emily noticed something strange, a series of claw marks carved into the bark of several trees. They were large and jagged, unlike anything she'd seen before. Her stomach tightened as she traced one of the marks with her fingers. It looked fresh, as if whatever made them had been there recently. Buddy stopped walking and stared up at the marks, its ears twitching. For a moment, it seemed almost curious. "Do you know what made these?" Emily whispered, more to herself than to Buddy. It didn't respond, simply tilting its head slightly before continuing down the path. She followed, trying to push the unsettling image out of her mind. When they returned to the cabin, Jake was waiting for her, his expression grim. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, stepping aside to let her in. Buddy padded past him, ignoring his presence entirely, and curled up by the fireplace. "What is it now?" Emily asked wearily, dropping her jacket onto the couch. "I went into town today," Jake began, pacing back and forth. "People are talking. More animals have gone missing, and someone claims they saw something big moving through the woods. Last night, something fast, something that didn't look natural." Emily frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. "And you think Buddy has something to do with it?" "I don't know," Jake admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I can't ignore the timing. Ever since you brought that thing home, weird stuff has been happening. Don't you see that?" "Tss. Not that thing," Emily snapped, her voice rising. "It's Buddy. And it hasn't done anything wrong. How do you know?" Jake shot back, his frustration boiling over. "You're so caught up in how pretty it is that you're blind to the danger? What if it's luring us into a false sense of security? What if it's waiting for the right moment to strike?" Emily opened her mouth to argue, but the words caught in her throat. A small, nagging part of her wondered if he was right. Buddy had shown incredible intelligence, mimicking sounds and solving puzzles with ease. Could it really be manipulating her emotions? Was their bond genuine, or was it all an illusion? Before she could respond, a loud crash came from outside, startling both of them. Buddy's ears perked up, and it stood abruptly, its glowing fur bristling. Emily rushed to the window, peering out into the darkness. The yard was empty, but the bushes near the edge of the property swayed as if something had just passed through them. "What was that?" Emily whispered, her heart pounding. "I don't know," Jake said, grabbing a flashlight from the kitchen counter. "Stay here. I'll check it out." "No way," Emily protested, following him to the door. "I'm coming with you." Jake hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Together, they stepped outside, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the shadows. Buddy trailed silently behind them, its eyes gleaming like twin lanterns in the dark. The air was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves making Emily jump. They searched the perimeter of the cabin but found nothing unusual, just overturned trash cans and scattered debris. Still, the feeling that they weren't alone lingered. As they headed back inside, Jake paused by the porch railing, examining the deep gouges etched into the wood. "These weren't here yesterday," he muttered. Tracing the marks with his fingers, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The claw marks were identical to the ones she'd seen earlier in the forest. Whatever had made them was getting closer. That night sleep eluded her. Every creak of the cabin, every gust of wind, made her sit up in bed, straining to listen. Buddy lay curled up at the foot of her bed, seemingly unfazed by the eerie atmosphere. At one point, Emily swore she heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, circling the house. She reached for Jake, shaking him awake. "Did you hear that?" she whispered urgently. Jake groaned, rubbing his eyes. "Hear what? There's someone or something outside?" Reluctantly, Jake grabbed the flashlight again and went to investigate. This time, Buddy stayed behind, watching silently as they slipped out of the room. Emily waited anxiously, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Minutes passed, each, one stretching endlessly. Finally, Jake returned, looking pale and shaken. "I saw something," he said quietly, sitting on the edge of the bed. A shadow. It moved too fast for me to get a good look, but it wasn't human. Emily's breath hitched in her throat. "What do we do?" "I don't know," Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think it's time we faced the truth. Buddy might not be the only one of its kind out there."
The next
Morning, Emily woke up exhausted, her mind racing with possibilities. She glanced at Buddy, who was lying peacefully by the fireplace, and felt a pang of guilt. How could something so beautiful be tied to such fear and uncertainty? She wanted to believe it was innocent, but the evidence was piling up against it. Later that day, while Jake was out running errands, Emily decided to test Buddy's behavior. She set up a simple experiment using a mirror she found in the closet. Placing it on the floor, she positioned Buddy in front of it and observed its reaction. Most animals either ignored their reflection or reacted aggressively, mistaking it for another creature. But Buddy didn't either. Instead, it studied the mirror intently, tilting its head and reaching out a paw to touch the glass. It almost looked curious, as if it understood the concept of reflection. Emily recorded the interaction, her hands trembling slightly. She uploaded the video to her social media account, adding a caption, "Asterisk, does anyone else think this is strange?" Within minutes, comments flooded in. Some praised Buddy's intelligence, while others speculated about its origins. One commenter stood out, however, a user named Watcher in the Woods, who wrote, "Asterisk, be careful. Intelligence like that is rare, too rare." Asterisk, the comment sent a shiver down Emily's spine. Who was this person, and why did they sound so ominous? She considered deleting the post, but before she could, another message popped up. This one read, "Check your cameras." Confused, Emily checked the security camera footage from the previous night. What she saw made her blood run cold. A dark figure darted across the yard, moving with unnatural speed. Its silhouette was distorted, almost shapeless, but its glowing eyes mirrored Buddy's perfectly. The timestamp confirmed it had been there during the same time Jake claimed to have seen the shadow. Her hands shook as she replayed the clip, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. There was no denying it now. Buddy wasn't alone. Something or someone was watching them, lurking in the shadows. And whatever it was, it shared Buddy's eerie, otherworldly glow. That night, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Buddy slept soundly by the fireplace, oblivious to her turmoil. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the distant echo of a chilling sound, a low guttural growl that sent goosebumps rippling across her skin. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes watched and waited. For the first time since finding Buddy, Emily felt truly afraid.
Asterisk document. Part 6 The days following the gauntlet were a blur of exhaustion and adrenaline. The recruits had survived one of the toughest challenges yet, but they knew better than to think it was over. Varnick's presence loomed larger than ever, his sharp gaze scanning the group like a predator sizing up its prey. Leela, Alex, and Mia trained harder than before, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. They pushed themselves not just for survival, but to prove something to Varnick, to the academy, and most importantly, to themselves. One morning, as the recruits gathered in the training yard, Varnick's voice cut through the air like a whip. "Today, we test your combat skills against mine," he announced, his mandibles clicking ominously. "A demonstration bout. One of you will face me in hand-to-hand combat." The announcement sent a ripple of unease through the group. No one moved, each recruit silently hoping someone else would volunteer. Varnick's reputation as an unbeatable fighter was well known, and the thought of stepping into the ring with him seemed like signing a death wish. "Come now," Varnick sneered, pacing in front of the group. "Surely one of you has the courage to step forward, or are all of you too afraid?" Leela clenched her fist, her heart pounding. She hated the way he mocked them, treating them like insects beneath his feet. But she also knew better than to act on impulse. Fighting Varnick wasn't just about strength, it was about strategy, patience, and knowing when to strike. Alex glanced at her, his expression tense. "He's baiting us," he muttered under his breath. "Don't fall for it." Mia nodded, her dark eyes fixed on Varnick. "We need to stay calm. He's looking for a reaction." But Leela felt something stir deep inside her, a mix of anger and defiance. She had spent her life fighting to survive, enduring hardships that would break most people. She wasn't about to let Varnick humiliate her or her teammates any longer. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Varnick's antennae twitched, and a low, guttural sound escaped his throat, something between a laugh and a growl. The Death World Scavenger," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Brave enough to face me? Very well. Let us see if your primitive instincts can match my skill." The other recruits parted, forming a wide circle around the makeshift arena. Leela walked to the center, her movements deliberate and controlled. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her, but she forced herself to focus. This wasn't about proving herself to them, it was about standing up to Varnick, about showing him that she wouldn't be broken. As the two faced off, the difference in size and strength was glaringly obvious. Varnick towered over her, his insectoid body gleaming in the sunlight. His limbs were long and powerful, designed for speed and precision. Leela, by comparison, looked small and fragile, but she didn't flinch. She had faced predators far more terrifying than this alien instructor. "Begin," Varnick barked, lunging forward with startling speed. Leela ducked, narrowly avoiding his first strike. His claws grazed the air above her head, close enough to make her hair stand on end. She rolled to the side, putting distance between them as she assessed his movements. Varnick fought with calculated precision, his attack swift and relentless. But there was a pattern to his strikes, a rhythm she could exploit if she stayed focused. "You're fast," Varnick admitted, circling her with predatory grace, "but speed alone won't save you." Leela didn't respond. She kept her breathing steady, her mind clear. When Varnick attacked again, she sidestepped, using his momentum against him. She drove her elbow into his side, aiming for a weak point in his exoskeleton. The blow landed, drawing a sharp hiss from Varnick, but it wasn't enough to slow him down. "Not bad," he sneered, recovering quickly, "but you'll need more than that to win." The fight intensified, Varnick pressing his advantage with a flurry of strikes. Leela blocked and dodged, her movements fluid and economical. She couldn't afford to waste energy not against an opponent like this. Every time she found an opening, she struck, targeting vulnerable areas where his armor was thinner. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their earlier skepticism replaced by awe. No one had expected Leela to last this long against Varnick. Even Alex and Mia, who had seen her fight before, were amazed by her resilience. "She's incredible," Alex whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How is she still standing?" "Because she doesn't give up," Mia replied, her eyes never leaving the fight. "That's what makes her strong." Inside the arena, Leela felt her muscles burning, her body pushed to its limits, but she refused to back down. She remembered the lessons of her homeworld, the importance of timing, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, she saw it, as Varnick lunged forward. His guard dropped slightly, exposing his midsection. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, Leela launched herself at him, driving her knee into his exposed flank. The impact sent him stumbling backward, his balance faltering before he could recover. She followed up with a powerful kick to his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. For a moment, there was silence. Then the crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing across the training yard. Leela stood over Varnick, her chest heaving as she caught her breath. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, but she didn't waver. She had done it. She had stood up to Varnick and proven that she was more than just a primitive scavenger. Varnick rose slowly, his mandibles clicking furiously. There was no mistaking the anger in his eyes, but there was also something else grudging. "Respect." "Impressive," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You've earned my attention, human." Leela didn't reply. She simply turned and walked away, rejoining her teammates as the crowd continued to cheer. Alex clapped her on the shoulder, his grin wide and genuine. "I can't believe you just did that," he said. "You shattered his face." "It's not over," Leela replied, her tone serious. "He's not going to forget this." Mia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "She's right. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." Later that evening, the trio met in the corner of the mess hall, away from the noise and chaos. Leela picked at her food, her thoughts still lingering on the fight. She had stood up to Varnick, but she knew the consequences wouldn't be pleasant. He wasn't the kind of instructor to let something like this slide. "What happens now?" Alex asked, voicing the question they were all thinking. "Do you think he'll retaliate?" "He already is," Mia said quietly. "This isn't just about Leela anymore. It's about all of us. He'll try to break us to make sure none of us forgets who's in charge." Leela nodded, her gaze distant. "Then we don't let him. We keep pushing forward, no matter what." Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Easier said than done. You saw how angry he was after the fight. What if he goes after us next?" "He might," Mia admitted. "But we're stronger together. Remember that." The conversation paused as they considered the road ahead. The fight had been a victory, but it had also raised the stakes. Varnick wouldn't stop until he had reclaimed his authority, and that meant trouble for all of them. "We'll handle it," Leela said finally, her voice firm. "One step at a time." As the night wore on, the barracks grew quiet, the recruits drifting off to sleep. Leela lay awake in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She replayed the fight in her mind, analyzing every move, every decision. She had faced Varnick and survived, but she knew this was only the start of something much bigger. Outside, the wind howled softly, carrying with it the promise of challenges yet to come. Leela closed her eyes, letting the sounds lull her into a restless sleep. Whatever tomorrow held, she was ready. Together, they would face it, and together, they would overcome. *** document. Part 1 *** The sun was setting over the dense forest in northern Montana, casting long shadows across the ground. Emily Dawson tightened her grip on her camera bag as she trudged through the thick underbrush, her Boots sank slightly into the soft soil, and the air smelled of pine needles and damp earth. She had always loved hiking alone. It gave her time to think, to breathe, and most importantly, to take pictures. Wildlife photography was more than just a hobby for Emily. It was her passion. Every trip into the woods felt like an adventure waiting to unfold. Today, however, something felt different. The usual sounds of birds chirping and squirrels scurrying seemed muted, almost absent. The silence was eerie, pressing down on her like a weight. Still, she pressed forward, determined not to let unease get the better of her. After all, this part of the forest was known for its untouched beauty and rare sightings of animals that avoided human contact. Maybe today would be the day she captured that perfect shot, the one that would make her Instagram followers go wild. As she climbed over a fallen log, her foot caught on a root, and she stumbled forward. Cursing softly, she steadied herself against a tree trunk. That's when she noticed a strange glint among the leaves ahead. Frowning, Emily adjusted her backpack and stepped closer. At first glance, it looked like sunlight reflecting off metal or glass, but as she moved closer, the source of the shimmer became clearer. It wasn't man-made at all. Trapped beneath a tangle of broken branches was a creature unlike anything Emily had ever seen. Its body was sleek and feline-like, covered in fur that shimmered faintly with an iridescent glow. The colors shifted subtly as the light hit it, silver blending into gold, then hints of green and blue. But what struck her most were its eyes. Even though they were half closed in pain, they gleamed with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't the eyes of a wild animal, they were knowing, too aware. Emily hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. The creature didn't look dangerous, not in its current state. One of its legs was pinned under a heavy branch, and blood stained the fur around its side. Despite its injuries, it watched her intently, its chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Slowly, cautiously, Emily knelt beside it. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Hey there," she said softly, keeping her voice low and steady. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature made no sound, but its gaze never wavered. Emily reached out a hand, stopping just short of touching it. When it didn't flinch or try to bite, she took it as a good sign. Carefully, she began pulling away the smaller branches that trapped it. Each movement sent a jolt of adrenaline through her veins, but she refused to back down. This thing, whatever it was hurt, and if she left it here, it might not survive the night. After several minutes of effort, she managed to free its leg. The creature let out a soft, almost musical purr-like noise, and Emily couldn't help but smile. "You're welcome," she murmured, sitting back on her heels. Up close, she could see how truly alien it was. Its ears were longer and more pointed than any cat's, and its tail, what little she could see of it, was prehensile, curling slightly around in her by twig. Yet despite its otherworldly appearance, there was something undeniably endearing about it. "Guess I can't just leave you here, huh?" Emily said, tilting her head. She glanced around, considering her options. Carrying it back to her cabin would be risky, not only because of its size, but also because she had no idea what it really was. For all she knew, it could turn on her the moment it regained its strength. Still, leaving it behind felt wrong. Taking a deep breath, she slipped her arms underneath its surprisingly light body and lifted it gently. It tensed for a moment but didn't struggle, seemingly content to rest against her. The hike back was harder than she'd anticipated. The creature's weight, combined with the uneven terrain, left her muscles burning by the time she reached the edge of the forest. By then, twilight had settled over the landscape, painting everything in shades of gray and shadow. Emily paused for a moment, catching her breath while cradling the injured being in her arms. Its glowing fur provided just enough light to guide her steps, and she found herself marveling at how strangely beautiful it was. When she finally arrived at her cabin, she kicked open the door and stepped inside. Flicking on the lights, the cozy interior, filled with mismatched furniture and stacks of books, seemed even homier now that she wasn't alone. Gently, she placed the creature on a pile of blankets near the fireplace. It blinked slowly, watching her every move with those piercing eyes. Emily grabbed a first aid kit from the bathroom and returned to tend to its wounds. "You're lucky I'm such a sucker for strays," she joked, dabbing at the cuts on its side with a damp cloth. The creature flinched slightly, but otherwise remained still, allowing her to clean and bandage its injuries. As she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that it understood her, that it was studying her just as much as she was studying it. When she finished, she sat back on her heels and sighed. "Well, buddy, looks like you're stuck with me for a while." The nickname came naturally, rolling off her tongue without much thought. Buddy. It fit somehow. Even though she doubted it was actually male or even mammalian, still, it was easier than calling it the creature or it, and besides, it already seemed to respond to her voice. Whether that was coincidence or something more, she wasn't sure. Over the next hour, Emily busied herself making dinner, occasionally glancing over at Buddy to check on him. She decided to stick with the pronoun seemed to be resting comfortably, his breathing slow and steady. She snapped a few photos of him with her phone, unable to resist documenting the bizarre encounter. Before bed, she uploaded one of the pictures to her social media account, captioning it simply, "Asterisk found this little guy in the woods today. Anyone know what he is?" Asterisk within minutes, comments started pouring in. Some people guessed it was a rare breed of cat, while others suggested it might be some kind of exotic escapee from a zoo. A few joked that it looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Emily chuckled as she scrolled through the responses, feeling a sense of satisfaction for once. Her followers were as intrigued by her discovery as she was, but as she turned off her phone and climbed into bed, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. What exactly had she brought home? Was Buddy really harmless, or was she playing with fire? Shaking off the doubt, she reminded herself that he was injured and vulnerable. Whatever secrets he held, they could wait until morning. For now, she drifted off to sleep, lulled by the soft crackling of the fire and the quiet hum of Buddy's rhythmic breathing. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of a sound that wasn't quite a growl, nor a hiss, but something far older and darker. Somewhere deep in the forest, unseen eyes glimmered in the darkness, watching and waiting. Document, part to the next morning. Emily woke up to the smell of coffee brewing and the sound of footsteps in the kitchen. She groaned, stretching her arms above her head before rolling out of bed. Her boyfriend, Jake Monroe, was already up and moving around. He had arrived late last night after finishing a long shift at the local hardware store where he worked. Emily smiled at the thought of him making breakfast, but as she entered the living room, her smile faded. Jake stood by the fireplace, staring down at Buddy with a mixture of confusion and unease. Buddy, who had been sleeping peacefully when Emily went to bed, was now awake and watching Jake with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. The tension in the room was palpable, like a storm waiting to break. "What is that?" Jake asked without turning to look at her. His voice was sharp, tinged with suspicion. "It's an animal," Emily replied, trying to keep her tone light. She walked over to stand beside him, glancing down at Buddy. "I found it yesterday in the woods. It was hurt, so I brought it home." Jake finally turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "You brought it home? Are you serious? Do you even know what it is?" "No, I don't," Emily admitted. "But it needed help. Look at it, it's not exactly dangerous right now, is it?" Jake crossed his arms over his chest, his expression hardening. "That's not the point. You can't just bring random animals into the house, especially not something weird like this." He gestured toward Buddy, who tilted its head slightly, as if listening to their conversation. "Weird," Emily echoed, feeling a flicker of irritation. "It's not weird, it's unique. And it's hurt. Would you rather I left it there to die?" Jake sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, we need to be careful. What if it's sick or aggressive? We don't know anything about it." Emily knelt beside Buddy, placing a protective hand on its shimmering fur. "It hasn't done anything wrong. All it's done is rest and heal. Besides, I've already cleaned its wounds and bandaged them. It's fine." Jake didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue further. Instead, he shook his head and muttered something under his breath before heading back to the kitchen. Emily watched him go, frustration bubbling inside her. She understood his concerns, she really did, but part of her resented how dismissive he seemed. Buddy wasn't some monster. It was a living creature that deserved compassion. Over the next few days, Buddy continued to recover, growing stronger. With each passing hour, Emily spent most of her free time observing it, fascinated by its behavior. It was surprisingly calm and docile, rarely moving unless necessary. When it did, its movements were graceful and deliberate, almost hypnotic. To watch, Buddy seemed particularly fond of Emily, following her with its glowing eyes whenever she moved around the cabin. At times, it would even nuzzle against her hand, emitting a soft purring noise that made her heart melt. Jake, on the other hand, remained wary. He avoided Buddy as much as possible, only speaking to Emily about it when absolutely necessary. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Jake finally broke the silence. "Have you noticed anything strange lately?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Emily frowned, setting her book aside. "Strange how?" "I don't know," Jake said, leaning forward. "Just, things feel off." like last night. I heard noises outside the house, screeching, like something was in pain. And then this morning, I found claw marks on the porch railing. Emily felt a chill run down her spine, but she forced herself to stay calm. Claw marks. Are you sure they're fresh? Yes, I'm sure, Jake snapped, his frustration boiling over. And it's not just that. This thing, he pointed toward Buddy, who was curled up near the fireplace, hasn't left your side since you brought it here. Doesn't that seem odd to you? Animals don't usually act like that unless they want something. Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. Deep down, she knew Jake had a point. Buddy's behavior was unusual, bordering on unnatural. But every time she looked into those luminous eyes, all her doubts melted away. How could something so gentle and trusting be dangerous? I think you're overreacting, she said finally, though her voice lacked conviction. Buddy hasn't done anything to hurt us. If anything, it's been nothing but sweet. Jake stared at her for a moment, then shook his head. Fine. Believe what you want. But don't say I didn't warn you. As the days passed, Emily tried to push Jake's warnings out of her mind. She focused on caring for Buddy, documenting its progress with photos and videos. She posted updates online, sharing snippets of their daily interactions with her growing audience. People were captivated by Buddy's ethereal beauty, flooding her comment section with questions and theories. Some suggested it might be a rare mutation or a previously undiscovered species. Others speculated it could be extraterrestrial, pointing to its iridescent fur and preternatural intelligence as evidence. Despite the buzz, Emily couldn't ignore the subtle changes happening around the cabin. Strange noises echoed through the forest at night, louder and more frequent than before. Livestock from neighboring farms began disappearing without explanation, leaving farmers baffled and frightened. Even the wildlife seemed spookier, retreating deeper into the woods and avoiding human contact altogether. One afternoon, while exploring the area near the cabin, Emily stumbled upon something unsettling. A trail of feathers and blood led her to a small clearing, where she discovered the remains of what appeared to be a deer. Its carcass was mutilated, torn apart in a way that didn't resemble the work of any predator she'd ever seen. The sight sent a wave of nausea through her, and she quickly backed away, her mind racing. Could Buddy have done this? No, she told herself firmly. It was still recovering, barely able to walk properly. There was no way it could have hunted and killed such a large animal. But the doubt lingered, gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. Back at the cabin, she found Jake pacing anxiously. His hands were clenched into fist, and his jaw was tight with tension. I saw tracks, he said abruptly when he noticed her standing in the doorway. Big ones, near the shed. Whatever made them wasn't human. Emily swallowed hard, clutching the strap of her camera bag. Think. I don't know, Jake interrupted, his voice rough. But I do know one thing: we shouldn't trust that thing. Not completely. For the first time since bringing Buddy home, Emily felt truly conflicted. On one hand, she loved having it around. It brought a sense of wonder and excitement to her otherwise ordinary life. On the other hand, she couldn't deny the mounting evidence suggesting that something sinister was lurking beneath the surface. Was Buddy truly harmless, or was it hiding something far darker? That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Emily listened to the sounds of the forest outside. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it faint whispers that sounded almost like voices. Buddy slept peacefully by the fireplace, its glowing fur casting eerie shadows on the walls. For a brief moment, Emily wondered if she had made a terrible mistake, but then Buddy let out a soft purr, and her fears dissolved, replaced by a comforting warmth. Whatever Buddy was, she decided, it was hers to protect for now.